And it all comes down to this. 2 Game 7s for just 2 spots in the Stanley Cup final. Oh, how much fun it's going to be. Hello, everybody. I'm Dave Turner, along with Pat Pickens. Pat, this is a great day for the NHL. We have not one, but 2 Game 7s to talk about. The winners, of course, advancing to the Stanley Cup Finals. When you draw the playoffs up, when you hope for great games, I don't think, other than obviously a Stanley Cup Final going to Game 7, having these 2 Game 7s in consecutive nights, it's fantastic. And we're going to break down these series. We're going to go into some picks here. We're going to give you the X factors, everything like that. But Pat, just your initial thoughts on both these games, looking at the magnitude of what's going to happen on Friday and Saturday nights.
It's a little baffling, isn't it? Because these two series have come. They both kind of traveled the same road, and yet, in some regards, they're completely opposites. You look at the Hawks as the team that's trying to get back to that paramount, maybe for that level for one more great run at the Stanley Cup in this Taves, Kane, Keith, Crawford. Well, I guess not Crawford, but Taves, Kane, Keith, Seabrook era. You look at the Rangers in the East as the President's Trophy, the defending Eastern Conference champion, and the team that kind of expects to be there. The Ducks, on the other hand, are this upstart, but very talented, very strong, but young and upstart, but also with some pedigree with Getzlaf and Perry and Boschman and those guys. And then you have the darlings, the Tampa Bay Lightning, who are fast and energetic and electric, and they have the great coach and the fun coach and the triplets line and the superstar in Stamkos and the defenseman in Hedman who's coming into his own. Oh man, this is going to be fantastic Friday and Saturday night. When you look at these series, I mean, they're just two terrific series. With the Eastern Conference Final, the Rangers showing some pride and some heart, going on the road to Tampa, and now all of a sudden they're in the driver's seat, going back to the building where they never lose Game 7. And then the Hawks did the exact same thing on home ice on Wednesday night. They go into the game, and Duncan Keith takes over, and Marian Hossa scores a goal, and Andrew Shaw takes over, and Patrick Kane scores another electric goal. And man, these Game 6s were just terrific. Derek Brassard with the hat trick. The Marc Messier hat trick. The Game 6 on the road in the conference final, facing elimination again. All we needed was the guarantee there. And I'll be at MSG Friday night for Game 7 of the conference final between the Rangers and Lightning. And man, I can't wait.
Yeah, it's really going to be a special a couple of days for this league. And the interesting thing about these series is that I think that if you polled not just the fans of each fan base, but around the country, around North America even, after each game, who's going to win the series, you would have had some really sweeping results. I mean, the Rangers after Game 1 looked like they were in control. The Ducks early looked like they were in control. Then all of a sudden, Chicago makes their comeback. Tampa Bay hangs 6 on them twice. And it's almost as if, I guess it's not surprising that either of these are in a Game 7 because of how good all 4 of these teams are. But in some ways, these teams really had to overcome a lot to get to this point, which is fascinating in itself because did you really expect the Rangers to win on Game 6? Probably, yeah, because of their pedigree. Did you expect Chicago to win a Game 6? Same, with the pedigree, which makes me think, going into this, is that going to be the difference? I mean, look, we had last year where I guess you could say that Chicago was a more veteran team than the Kings last year because they had won 2 cups. They had been there a little longer. Goes to overtime, anything happens. To me, the biggest thing that I always feel about Game 7s is that you kind of have to expect the unexpected, whether it's a fourth liner scoring a goal or something crazy happening. And then who knows? I mean, sometimes these games do end up in blowouts just because it's hanging on a thread and then something happens and the floodgates open. But then other times you get what could be like the Western Conference Finals last year, which was a Game 7 overtime. And look, I think that we could be headed to overtime in both these series. Just because we know how the Rangers tend to play these low-scoring games. I can't see Henrik Lundqvist giving up more than 2 goals. And for Chicago and the Ducks, I really feel like we might see a little bit of where each team is kind of maybe someone scores early and then you just see Chicago rise from the ashes again. But it's going to be a lot of fun. Pat, let's dive into the series here. Let's go with the East first. You've obviously been embedded with this series, and seem to know everything about the pulse of this series. But
I know nothing about the pulse of this series. I have no feeling on this series whatsoever. If you ask the people who I've made predictions to, I've had no pulse of this series because I had the same feeling as you after Game 1. The methodical machine-like Rangers, and it just kind of got the vibe that it wouldn't even be long. That it might even be 5 games for them. And then, like you said, you get 6 back-to-back 6 goals against Henrik Lundqvist. And then, just for whatever reason, the Cam Talbot in goal narrative started.
They need to stop with that.
Which is baffling because Henrik Lundqvist was left out to dry in games 2 and 3 of this series. And it's interesting, though, because as these series progress, they're almost like different series within series, because you had Game 1, the methodical machine-like Rangers, 2 and 3 where the high-flying Lightning. Game 4 and 6 you could almost group together because the Rangers just took it to the Lightning with Rick Nash scoring goals and Marty St. Louis scoring goals and Derek Brassard taking over. And Game 5 was almost like that you block it in with that Game 1 where the Lightning just played this just incredible and just disciplined, almost perfect game in Game 5 where they shut out the Rangers in Game 5. So, like you said before, I mean, it's hard to tell because the Rangers' history dictates that they're going to win. They've never lost a Game 7 at Madison Square Garden. Henrik Lundqvist seems to only give up 1 goal in these Game 7s. If you look back, it seems like every Game 7 he either gives up 1 or none. And the ones of late, he's given up only 1. He gave up 1 against Washington. He gave up 1 in Game 7 in Pittsburgh last season. He gave up 1 to Philadelphia in the first round last season also. So it's one of those things that it just kind of feels like the Lightning could score a goal and then defend. I mean, the first team to score a goal will be in great shape because obviously, the team that scores first, wins a lot. But I mean, if you consider that how good and how resilient are the Rangers in these closeout games. I mean, they were behind twice in the Washington series and came back and forced and won the game. Won the elimination games. They won them both in overtime. They won Game 5 and they won Game 7. So it's just a matter of which series or which teams are going to show up because the Lightning, for whatever reason, have looked better at the Garden than they have on home ice. For whatever reason, it seems like they get the crowd behind them and they try to play the running gun game, and the Rangers seem okay at doing that. Based on look at what they did in Tampa. They scored 5, 6, and 7 in games 3, 4, and 6. So, but at the Garden, it feels like Tampa's more content to play the road game. And you have to think, Dave, that at some point this streak of Game 7s is going to catch up with the Rangers, especially given the number of games they played through the last 4 seasons. I mean, this is the 4th year in a row where the Rangers' season will end after Memorial Day.
Yeah, it has to weigh on them, and certainly, statistics. If you see one thing trending one way, chances are eventually it's going to fall back the other way. Just the law of averages. I don't know if that's necessarily something that you want to put stock into with this, but for me, the interesting thing about this is the Game 5 win for Tampa Bay. If they had won that game 4-3, I wouldn't put much stock in it. But the fact is that they went into a hostile Madison Square Garden. Obviously, Game 5 is not quite Game 7, but in terms of a team that hasn't really been there before, that was huge that they were able to go out and play a defensive game. Because if you try to play run and gun against teams with good goaltenders, it's a toss-up because it's really going to be who comes up with a couple big saves. And to me, that's not sustainable. It never is in the playoffs. And Tampa, in Game 5, learned how to play the shot blocking way, where in a sense where they kind of, I mean, look what Washington was able to do. If you add a little bit of Washington of Tampa Bay's offense to Washington, they probably win that series. And I think that maybe Tampa can realize that if they can play a good enough defensive game, they have the scoring, they have the two lines that can maybe get two and possibly be the difference. But Henrik, he's to me he's the biggest X factor because Ben Bishop has never been in a spot like this. Sure, you talk about Game 7 against Detroit, not the same thing. I mean, completely different.
On home ice, completely controlled environment, and he was good. I mean, it was a shutout. So I mean, he's been good in spots. I think the interesting thing is you look at history where Lundqvist got pulled in a clinching game in Game 6 in Philadelphia last year and came back and, like I said, pitched only allowed the one goal in the Game 7 on home ice. It's how Bishop responds to being pulled in Game 6, really, because he was not great, but he wasn't that bad. I mean, he made the acrobatic save on, I believe it was Brassard, before Miller scored. That was that close to being a momentum-changing save. I mean, he's been great in some spots in this series, but like you said, like Lundqvist is the X factor. You kind of know what you're going to get from Lundqvist in Game 7, and Bishop's been all over the place this series, and you're almost unsure what you're going to get from Bishop. And we texted about this the other day. What concerns me from Tampa's perspective and what I would feel good with from the Rangers' perspective, besides just history, is that Tampa has got two lines, basically 6 players that are scoring goals for them, and maybe even less than that when you consider that Filppula is not really scoring goals. So they have basically 5 guys scoring goals for them. They have other guys chipping in points, Hedman's chipping in points, Filppula's assists. I mean, Ben Bishop got an assist in Game 6, and so did Stralman. But, I mean, from a pure goal-scoring perspective, it's basically the triplets, Stamkos and Killorn, and that's it. So if the Rangers could find a way to limit those 5 guys, I mean, Callahan scored in Game 6, which was his first goal in the playoffs as a member of the Lightning. So if the Rangers can slow the triplets down in Game 7, limit them, and maybe utilize some of the clutching and grabbing that we saw in earlier rounds, that because Game 7 they're going to call it probably a little looser than usual, a little more lax than usual. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Rangers take a few liberties with the triplets and with a relatively undersized front top 6, and see if the Lightning can get a goal from basically their bottom 5 guys. Guys like, obviously Morrow's not really a goal scorer, but Boyle, who had a great chance in Game 6, Callahan again, if Paquette's in the lineup, or if it's Nemesnikov again. But it'll be, I mean, or if that that triplets line can just carry them back above, over the top, because you got to think the Rangers will probably score at least 1. I mean, or more. And if they score more than 1, it's probably going to be a rout for the Rangers. But at the same point, if if the Lightning can get any balance, any scoring at all, I mean, basically at all, they're going to be in. It's going to. I don't really have a feel for this Game 7 at all. My gut tells me the Rangers are going to win it, because that's what the Rangers do. They make things difficult on themselves, and then when the chips fall, who's left standing? It's the Rangers.
Yeah, and Ben Bishop was actually pulled in Game 4 of the Montreal series after giving up 3 goals early there. He came back with he stopped 27 of 29, but he got the loss.
Mm-hmm. Well, so, I mean, yeah, Carey Price
did respond and played pretty well that game, but Carey Price's performance could very much be similar to what we might see from Henrik Lundqvist. So.
Lightning, by the way, 2-3 in closeout games this postseason. Obviously, they let Montreal win a couple games, and they haven't won a closeout game on road ice this year. So I believe they're 0-1 in potential closeout games, or I guess they're. Wait, hang on a second. Let me think about this. No, they didn't clinch the series in. No, they clinched it on home ice.
Yes.
So what did they
They
do?
won game 6 at home against Montreal and game 7 at home against Detroit.
Yeah. So so they haven't won a road closeout game this year.
No.
But they also blew the home game in game 6 against the Rangers.
Yes, to me, we'll make our definitive final picks, backs against the wall at the end of this. But to me, I think you have to lean Rangers. I honestly think the X factor is John Cooper. I've liked him so much of what he's done with this team, how he's kind of reacted to the ebbs and flows of this series and kind of, preached defense when they needed defense and they got it. And he seems to kind of know the buttons to push. It'll be very interesting to see if he can find a way, and what he goes with. I'm assuming that they're going to try to play a more defensive game, and he knows that he's not going to be able to run and gun. Because look, if you try to open it up early and they take it back the other way and score on you, you might be done. So I think it's almost like you got to advance through the first 10 minutes, survive the crowd,
navigate it.
Yeah, and then just keep your heads afloat. It'll be very interesting to see what look, AV's been to a final before. He certainly knows how to coach in these big games. It'll be interesting to see if Cooper can have his team in the right mindset to play the kind of game that will work.
Yeah, no, it feels like he has his finger on the pulse of this team. But at this point, and here's where we'll transition from this. It's interesting to me though, Dave. If the Lightning don't win here, the pressure's on them next year, isn't it?
Yeah, because they've built this team up. The Rangers might go through a little bit of cap issues. Montreal's not that good other than Carey Price. There's no one else out east, I think, that really scares you. I mean, Pittsburgh, who knows if they're healthy, but I'm not sure. Tampa Bay is probably the class of the East moving forward, if you would think. Yep. I think there is pressure on them to win here, because if not, it becomes a season where they expect a cup or nothing. But that's what the Rangers are in right now.
Mm-hmm. The other thing, too, is where the Lightning are at, they're signed. The vast majority of their team is under contract, but you know who the big fish that's an expiring contract after next season, right?
Stamkos.
Yeah, exactly. So I kind of feel like the heat's on them in some regard this year, just because it's almost I'm equating to them to the Kings at this point, because they have the 12 Kings, where they kind of, they learned a little bit. They got their sweep. They were happy to be there in the postseason last year under Cooper. They brought they brought in a bunch of guys, Stroman, Boyle, obviously the trade for Callahan, the trade for Braden Coburn. I mean, they made some moves to try and shore up that defense garrison and whatnot. And now, if this season ends with a blown opportunity to the Cup final in 2 consecutive games, Stamkos is on the watch list for UFA after next year. You got to think he's going to command a ton of money. There's teams out there capable of spending it. And what's interesting to me is you look at, this would be the second Game 7 that Steven Stamkos would have lost as a member of the Lightning. And you almost have to wonder how much longer. First off, the Lightning are at the top of the cap for next season. And secondly, how much longer he's going to want to be, this kind of also-ran, middle-of-the-road team that, A, can't get it done, and B, has all these fans flooding his building. I mean, Ranger fans were there en masse. I mean, I guess that could be the case even if they lose in the Cup final. But it'll be an interesting storyline, I think, for the Lightning beyond this year.
Yeah, my final point on that is, are you going to pay upwards of $10 million for someone who might not be your best player? That's my thought on that. But switching across to the Western Conference.
That's a little big at Stammer there.
No. I mean, again, look, Steven Stamkos is a phenomenal player, but the way Tyler Johnson's going, you could have a 1A, 1B situation. Yeah. I don't know if you can even say that Stamkos will be better than Johnson in a couple of years, but we'll find out.
Yeah.
Speaking of the West, though, and a team who has had salary cap troubles, Chicago Blackhawks, they forced Game 7 after finally beating the Ducks in regulation.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. The Ducks had not lost in regulation. It's been a couple of overtime games that have been the difference between them and a perfect run up until last night. It's unbelievable what Chicago has done here, because I get the feeling that the Ducks are a better team. They're hungrier, I think.
Oh.
They're just bigger, they're deeper, but Chicago just has this ability that I don't know, other than the Kings, no one else really has, where they can manufacture goals, they can outlast you, they can play a terrible game and still find a way to win. And sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
or even get themselves back. Look, they had no business getting themselves back into Game 5, and they did it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that's what's a really interesting thing about this is that you do have the Getzloffs and the Perrys and the Beauchemin who have
And Kessler's been fantastic.
who have been there before. But I almost feel like this is a game where Chicago just knows how to get it done. But then again, I wouldn't be surprised if it goes the other way. Look, Frederick Anderson's been the better goalie in this series, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure, I would say. I mean, and there were huge question marks about him coming in. You looked at, him in Game 1. I mean, again, it's another one of those tale of two series things because the Hawks were the better team in Game 1 and lost. And then the Ducks kind of it's been a strange series to say the least because like you, I keep waiting for Chicago to run out of gas here with the defenseman. I mean, Timonen was a healthy scratch in Game 6. They replaced him with Rundblad, who was atrocious in Game 1. Led a couple plays, led the goals, and I mean, it's not even like these guys, the Timonens, the Rundblads, the Kyle Comiskys, who have been basically, taking offensive zone starts away from Keith and Seabrook just to manufacture them any break whatsoever. Because I mean, this series has just been just incredible when you look at what the Hawks have managed to do. I mean, you look at Comiskey in Game 6. He had 7 minutes. He got 10 shifts. I mean, 7:15, and Rundblad played 5:53. So I mean, and those are like the minutes that Timonen's playing too. So I mean, we laud Ryan Suter for playing in the upwards of 28, 29, 30 minutes a night. I mean, Duncan Keith is doing that every night against the best players. And oh, by the way, 3 assists for Duncan Keith in Game 6. I mean, Nick Hjalmarsson's +4 in that game too. So, I mean, you look at when you just said it, when it matters most, the Hawks' best players have been their best players, and their top 4 defensemen have been just studs. It's really incredible that this team, that these 4 guys, I mean, basically since Roosevelt got injured, and I know they had a lot of time, they had a big break between second and third round. I mean, this is a defensively, when you look at the deal they've got that they traded for Timonen, I mean, Timonen hasn't played much at all this postseason at all, and he's dressed. This last night, or Game 6 was the first game he didn't dress. So, they had goalie problems with Crawford in the first round. They've had defense difficulties. I mean, even in Minnesota, when Roosevelt went down and they survived that Game 4 where they almost blew it. And then this series, like you said, they've just been, I mean, the Ducks have been heavy. Just heavy, hard plays, hard on it. And even if you look at the way the Ducks played, they were not necessarily very good in Game 6, and yet there they were, 3-2 in the last 10 minutes of the game before Shaw scored the goal that kind of put it over the top. What's interesting to me, and we alluded to this a little bit when we were talking off air, that you mentioned Cooper in the East, but Boudreau in the West versus Quenneville, it's really bizarre because Boudreau you think is a really great coach. He's got all the wins, all the regular season wins. He's been in the playoffs. He finally got over the hurdle to the conference final, and yet here are the Ducks again, or a Boudreau coached team again with Game 7 on home ice, and is the favorite. And it's hard to think that. I mean, we said 09. Washington lost, home ice, Pittsburgh. 10, Washington lost, home ice, Montreal. They fired Boudreau in Washington. He went to Anaheim. 13, Game 7, first round, Detroit out. Game 7, LA, second round, 14. They've got bombed, and they get bombed in all these Game 7s with Boudreaux. And it's just incredible that we're in this situation again where the Ducks had the chance to get to the Cup final and Boudreaux get over that hump. And here we are, Game 7, home ice. And, I mean, I think the Ducks are a better team. I keep waiting for the Hawks to wear out, just like I keep waiting for Game 7 to catch up with the Rangers. And maybe it won't.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing is, we expect, maybe you have to just go with what you know at this point. And what you know is that it should be Chicago and the Rangers based on what we've seen. The Chicago with being there before and winning the big games and Bruce Boudreaux's inability and the fact that Tampa's young and the Rangers always seem to win these Game 7s. But, I think that's the beauty of it. And you look at the Ducks and – who's to say they can't win? No, not that Boudreaux, I think, is that much of the issue. He's a good coach. But who's to say they can't win despite of the coach anyway? You have look at Nate Thompson coming back. I think is really interesting for this team because they are 4 centers deep now that are all very good. Sure, you have the Getzlaf line and the Kessler line, but Thompson with Cogliano and Palmieri is excellent. Even the fourth line with Sakachu's been in with Edom and Raquel is a pretty good fourth line that can actually, I would say that's a third line on quite a few teams. And to me, the other one is just the young defense of this team is playing beyond their years. Hampus Lindholm, who's had his share of mistakes, looks like he's going to be a stud. Cam Fowler, I mean, this guy gets better every time he steps on the ice. Yeah. It was funny actually looking at the other day what the U.S. roster, after these playoffs, what the U.S. roster would be for the World Cups. And we were thinking something of like a Fowler, Suter, Shattenkirk, Bufflin, and then Tyler Johnson centering Zach Parise and Patrick Kane.
Gee,
it's interesting.
And then Kessler in a shutdown role.
Yeah, with Callahan and then Pavelski's in there. It's interesting to see these young American players really starting to step up, which is is great for the game. But getting back to the Ducks here, I've really liked this team, and I'll admit I was wrong on them. Mm-hmm. I thought that what we're seeing from them now fading off is not even what I had thought would be their issue. I just thought that they were going to be too young, and that's not the case. I've been amazed by how good their young players have been. When it comes down to it, though, how much does home ice really matter in these games? I kind of tend to think that it doesn't because it's a puck. It could bounce anyway, and though the fans can kind of get into it and put you behind the 8 ball if you're down as a road team, I don't know, Pat. How much would you say favors the Ducks and the Rangers because they're home?
Well, you want to go back to history. You look at Alec Martinez and the Kings scored the goal last year in Game 7 on road ice. Obviously, the Kings, different kind of animal. I would say it's probably 50-50, just based on my own. I mean, I remember, Carolina won a Game 7 on home ice thanks to a puck over the glass penalty. You look back to 2009 in the Cup final. I mean, Pittsburgh went to Detroit and won a Game 7 at Joe Louis Arena. You look at the last time there was a 3-0. I'm sorry, there were 2 Cup final or 2 conference final Game 7s. And in 2000, and the Devils went to Philadelphia in a game, that a lot of people remember for Scott Stevens' hit on Eric Lindros. And they went to Philadelphia and won Game 7 and shut up the crowd in Philadelphia. Whereas in the Western Conference Final, that series went 7, Colorado and Dallas. And Dallas was the home team and won Game 7 3-2. So, like I said, based on history, like I said, Los Angeles won the Game 7 last year. You go back to 2011, Boston won the Game 7 over Tampa on home ice. I mean, and then won the Cup final Game 7 in Vancouver on road ice. So, to your point, I don't necessarily know that it matters a lot. I just kind of think the road team's going to win one and the home team's going to win the other. Just because, like I said, it's kind of a 50-50 deal where you would think Game 7 home ice would matter more, but I don't think it's. I mean, history looks at it looks good for the Rangers in that history because they've never lost the Game 7 on home ice, and they always seem to get it done. And Lundqvist is the best goalie, still playing, no doubt. But I mean, I get the vibe that one of the road teams will win a Game 7, and one of the home teams will win a Game 7. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, I think that could be the case. To me, the only thing that I will say that I will put my stamp of approval on guarantee, I think we're going to see two really good games.
Mm-hmm.
I can't, these teams have fought so hard and these teams are so good and obviously evenly matched that we're here in two Game 7s. I can't see either team running away with it.
You mentioned the American players though. You know who we just completely left out?
Who's that?
How about Brendan Saad?
Yeah.
Who's
Wow.
22, who's 22 and from Pittsburgh and a restricted free agent at the end of this year and man, what a series for that guy, huh?
Yeah, he's been incredible. It is fun to watch the American players do well and hope that, especially after how bad they were in Sochi. But that's for another day.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see two really good teams here. Pat,
Real
let's
fast.
make our picks. I want picks,
I want
and
I want to get this point out there because we
Sure,
talked
go
about it off air. We talked about Duncan Keith. You know where Duncan Keith ranks in terms of highest paid defenseman?
I'm not sure. Where is he?
Duncan Keith is the 17th highest paid defenseman in the NHL right now. He's behind Tobias Enstrom, is among the higher paid NHL defensemen
Wow.
in the NHL at the moment, and it's almost incredible when you think about the fact that guys like Bufflin, guys like Weber, guys like Subban, you could just rattle off the name Doughty, Letang, but who else? It's Brian Campbell, Dion Phaneuf, Mike Green was higher paid, Brent Burns was higher paid, Andrei Markov, who might be finished, is higher paid, and of the comps in his $5.5 million salary are Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Dan Girardi, Brooks Orpik, Matt Carl, and Mark Streit. That is
amazing.
baffling. That is incredible. This guy's going to be the Conn Smythe winner if the Hawks win the Stanley Cup. And yet, and he's signed forever. Just forever. He signed that enormous deal. He's going to be making that same money every year for the foreseeable future, a 13-year contract before the lockout. And it's time to give the guy his due because, he was I guess we got his due last year, Norris Trophy. And it's just funny because he's been so dominant this year in this postseason, and I had to make that point. So, yeah, let's go to predictions.
Okay. Pat, you want to start? Let's go with the East first here. You don't need to give me who scores the goals, but give me a score here.
I'm going to pick the Rangers 2-1. 2-1's been the score. I'll waffle with it a little bit, but, at the end of the day, I could see the Lightning winning, but I think it's going to be a terrific game. But, it's that Game 7 thing again,
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll take the Rangers 2-1 in Game 7, and I'll take the Hawks 3-1 in Game 7. Just, the pedigree kind of rises. I picked the Hawks, too, to win it all before the playoffs, and so I kind of have to stick with that just because, like you said, Boudreau in a Game 7, and the Hawks just find a way to get it done. I think they'll run. I mean, it kind of feels like if they get there, they'll run out of gas in the final, but I think the Hawks get to the Cup final.
Yeah, I picked Hawks and Tampa Bay before the playoffs started, so I think I'm going to have to go with that. Mm-hmm. Though it wouldn't surprise me if the Rangers win. And if I didn't have a horse in the race, I probably would pick the Rangers. But I don't know. I just feel like there's something a little different about this Tampa Bay team that they've kind of learned on the fly. Cooper has them ready. Maybe the luck at home finally goes away. I'm going to pick it 3-2 Tampa Bay. I think the Rangers make it interesting. I think Tampa Bay gets out to a 3-1 lead and then holds on for somehow dear life. And I'm going to go with Chicago too. Look, the Ducks are a great team, and the Ducks are going to be a very good team for the next 5 to 7 years probably. But I think after last year losing the way they did, Chicago knows that this might be the end of the depth that they've had, their real ability to quite get to the finals. I think they're going to need another couple of years after this to kind of restock the pantry.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't seen a really good game from Crawford in a while. I think he steps up because he's been there before. And I think the stage might be a little bit too big for Frederik Andersen. As much as he's going to be probably a top 5 goaltender in this league, I'm going to pick it 4-2 Chicago.
Maybe it's time to start paying Frederik Andersen like he's a top flight goaltender too, because he's going to be restricted after next year. And,
yeah, you don't want to deal with losing him because someone would give up the picks for him.
Yeah, and he's been really good. But again, the goaltenders, and who knows, they still have John Gibson in the can too. But we'll see. Man, this is going to be great, isn't it?
I can't wait. I mean, 2 straight nights of beautiful Game 7 hockey. If you're not even a hockey fan, you should be watching, especially with how bad. I'll take my dig at the NBA here, especially how non-competitive the conference finals were in the NBA, and baseball kind of being in the doldrums now.
Yep.
You've got to watch these games.
Yeah,
you have to.
I agree, especially when you consider that we're going to have trophies on display 2 nights in a row. We'll see. And the other thing too is, Dave, are they going to touch the trophies?
I don't think so.
I think the Rangers touched the President's Trophy this year.
It's true.
So we'll see. But I'm really excited. I can't wait. We'll be back Monday again to break down all the Game 7s. So I'm just really fired up and really excited to be in the building Friday night. And Dave, you enjoy your Game 7, both of them?
Oh, I will.
All right.
All right, so for Pat Pickens, I'm Dave Turner. This is Puck Talk with Pickens and Turner. We will be back with Stanley Cup preview and analysis after we get through these Game 7s. Enjoy, everybody.